Oh, I've been thinking, and I've conjured up one statement. If you're poor, don't get into fashion. My style isn't even my style. I can't afford my actual style. I want to be rich enough to afford my true fashion sense. Bro, I'm poor to afford fashion. I'm
Things
poor.
need to be
Bro,
more
I'm
accessible.
poor. Have you ever seen a TikTok/Reel comment section full of people saying, I'm too poor, I can't afford this, or wow, I wish I was rich, or how do you afford any of this? The language usage of poor is probably used casually in these comment sections. And the likelihood of the people who type this up are probably really young. But I have a deep distaste for people who claim poor when they themselves aren't really poor. Just some middle-class new gens sitting in their king-size rooms with their iPad, PS5, and newest iPhone sitting next to them as they type the phrase poor. People tend to socially compare themselves to creators who platform their vast collections of zany items they've taken years to possibly acquire, or maybe they're just stupid rich Nepo babies. Also, another theory of mine is that they're all in fashion debt, possibly, but who really knows? Comparing one's financial situation to others with more wealth can lead to feeling poor, even if the person meets their financial basic needs. I think it's hard to make comparisons to a lot of the creators that are on these platforms, specifically with fashion content just in general, since it's done as a job, and a lot of the times we can't come to the conclusion to justify the idea that this person's rich or this person took many years of their life to collect these items. We don't really know where they even acquire any of this money. There's a lot of questions left unanswered, but the biggest problem is comparison is the thief of joy. But generally speaking, a lot of creators will always put out their best pieces, the most expensive things to showcase so that they get more engagement and views, because obviously showing off like the most lamest, cheapest pieces of clothing won't really get that much attention/views. Obviously anything that's highly sought after, really archival pieces, really expensive items are going to get that engagement up. But the biggest problem with the average Joe or the average person comparing themselves to creators/content creators/YouTubers/pickup YouTubers, whatever, it's not only a detriment to themselves, but to their wallets and or their ego. But again, a lot of the retail prices that, are around high fashion and designer, like a lot of Yohji pieces that I even own, I never buy them for that price point. I always get them really cheap because it's all secondhand for the most part. The retail prices can be quite gawking, and I think a lot of times people will post the retail price or the resale value just to get the engagement, to get the views, but in general, they definitely didn't spend that much money unless they definitely got cucked into buying it, because to me, I think it's you took a giant L if you're spending retail and or above retail, which is resale value, on any fashion item just to begin with, because to be honest, it is free to move on with your life and try and find something else that's better and cooler. That's free. Another thing that I wanted to add in here is that fashion isn't about buying high-end designer. Just because you got into fashion doesn't mean you need to go down the cycle of purchasing high-end goods. From a consumer mindset, it does seem like you pay to win in order to get into fashion, in a sense, where if you acquire really highly sought after items, you are into fashion, you are very much a part of the community. You belong here because you acquired such a zany, interesting piece that cost so much money from Autumn Winter '02 or from 1992 of that serious, very, very serious runway. That's not how it works. When you get into fashion, you don't need to go down the cycle, which most people believe is buying high-end designer in order to be into fashion. Fashion has 3 pillars, and I will tell you what those pillars are: excitement, human interaction, and self-expression. The last one, everyone talks about it, but no one really talks about excitement and human interaction. The only real people that would be in the pillar of excitement are people that actually have a passion for fashion or for clothing. Some people say I hate fashion, I like clothes. I'm kind of in that department. I don't really like what fashion stands for now currently. And I mean, the true definition of fashion is
Fashion.
Mode.
流行、彼は
I mean, there's semantics, like some people are like, are you into fashion? And you know what kind of fashion they're talking about. It's not really like, are you into mainstream fashion? But the true definition of fashion is very much what I think a lot of the times people put themselves into. But fashion isn't just that as a whole. It's not about trying to follow what's trending. It's about kind of sculpting and creating something that is very much you. It's a personalization and a expression, the extension of oneself, your beliefs, your ideas, and also your culture. There's so many different things that fashion can go deeper into, and to the people that say fashion isn't deep, it's just clothing, you're literally the problem and you don't have a passion for fashion. I hate saying that, it sounds so weird. Besides fashion being self-expression, it can also be self-exploration in terms of how you decide to push yourself with the types of clothing you wear, maybe getting out of your comfort zone, and maybe pushing yourself in a more kind of being uncomfortable sort of situations that you can be in. I know a lot of men have the idea that wearing skirts or wearing things that are really flowy tend to be considered feminine or gay, and you know, that might be a concept that is just very much socially tempered into our minds, but as you get into fashion, that's something that you can kind of leave by the door. It's all about experimentation and pushing yourself forward in the way you think, while you also kind of create and maybe even encompass different ideas with the way you dress. It's super fun, and that's why it's super exciting. As for human interaction, I mean, it's pretty simple. You develop communities, you find the community you belong to, and you join that community, and or you belong into a giant, bigger community. I would argue we're all the same, but in different genres, let's just say. But nonetheless, there's a lot of personalization that you can do with a lot of the style that you create, rather than following formats. Yeah, I just wanted to add this idea in here in terms of like how people fall into the whole idea that you need to buy high-end designer to be into fashion, or you need to know runways and you need to know all the history of fashion. At the very bare minimum, as long as you're dressing for yourself and you're expressing yourself, that's all that matters. But I still have more conclusions to come to at the end of the video, so stick around. I'm gonna throw it back to myself. And this is all to say that fashion is a hobby and not a privilege. You're not entitled to be a consumer, nor should you be consumed by the hobby. But what exactly is a hobby? A hobby is an activity you may complete in your free time that brings you pleasures, meaning it's not a need for your life or your day-to-day. Venkat SR states that when you take time to do activities that make you happy, it helps improve mental health. Giving quality time to activities that you enjoy also helps your performance in your professional life. It improves your creative problem-solving abilities, helps you build better relationships with your coworkers, and makes you more empathetic. And I know a lot of you guys need that. I'm also speaking for myself here. Other benefits to having a hobby are reduced stress and overall well-being, and hobbies vary from physical activities, artistic ventures, and to sitting at home playing League of Legends. But the real question is, how are hobbies a privilege? Well, people in poverty can't afford to be into a hobby. Now let me expand on that. According to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you need specific needs to be able to kind of climb this tower to overall get the self-actualization that most people are in very much dire need of. The thing about people that are actually in true poverty or that are actually poor do not have the income to put into a hobby that, if not, is an extension of pleasure. The thing about hobbies is it's not a necessary need for anyone's life, just like fashion. Now, the argument that I've seen people make about fashion or style is that, well, poor people want to look good too. And the answer is yes, but like, the thing is, fashion as a hobby is getting into more sophisticated wearing of clothing, as well as purchasing usually items to acquire a certain style / look. Most of the time, people that are in poverty are either getting hand-me-downs, going to thrift stores, and or just trying to look presentable. It's more of a utility-based need rather than a physical attribute that they, put on to appear more aesthetic looking. There's a whole differentiation between the two parts, and I think it does such a disservice when people claim to be poor when in reality they could buy clothes for, every month if they needed to. People that are in poverty try to make things and or extend things. They do DIYs, they try and do mending and to make clothing last, rather than buying a haul of clothing, picking out what they like, and then throwing out the rest or throwing it to a thrift store. When people claim that they're poor, it usually indicates a few things to me. It's usually 1, they're young, 2, they don't have a job, and 3, they probably can't fathom spending a lot of money into a hobby. Because again, it's like an extracurricular thing. You don't need to do it. Now, I mean, the thing is, poverty doesn't necessarily stop people from developing their own personal style or doing anything that can be more extra or interesting, but usually people that are really struggling are just trying to live their daily lives by surviving, by working multiple jobs, by coming home and sleeping, by eating food. The basic needs that they need are just being met barely, and that's all they're struggling with. They don't have the time to worry about how are they going to be more business core or how they can look more aesthetically pleasing to other people around them. They wear their clothes, they look presentable, and that's good enough for them. I'm sure many of us have people and or friends or family that are actually in poverty that understand what I'm talking about and even can have some sort of experience in general to that. Now, usually there's a perception versus reality thing with utilizing the word poor in casual language. Now, what someone considers poor can be subjective, and depending on their personal experience and social context, it can vary depending on person to person. Now, one of the biggest things, especially with fashion, just in general, is your environment dictates your lifestyle. A lot of people are proud that they've started when they were very young, but I must say that you are just an accumulation of your environment, and one of your biggest influences is your parents. Most people who got into fashion at a young age had parents who are into the arts or are heavily progressive in the sense of self-expression, meaning they allow you to explore your sense of style and maybe even teaching you about fashion or any art form just in general. But I do know some people who grew up in a household where their parents were not only in the arts or interested in the arts, but also kind of pushed their children to also be heavily into art / self-expression, and they were able to develop their style in fashion a lot faster than most people did when COVID occurred or even prior to COVID. And when you're in an environment where it helps not only push you, but also tries to challenge you in not only the way you think, also the way you dress, you will obviously grow very quickly in your style progression compared to your peers in school. I know prior to COVID, there's a conversation to be had where people that were alt or dressed very different from the normative mainstream fashion were outcasted and or made fun of. Fast forwarding to today's standards, being different and or being alt is almost the mainstream and is widely accepted. A lot of things that were weird back then are cool now. A lot of the people, bullies, and people that thought it was strange to dress kind of different are now the people that are also dressing differently. You know, you hate to see it, you love to see it, whatever it is. So since my parents never really allowed me to grow into my fashion sense, obviously when I was in middle school to high school, I didn't really have a sense of self in terms of my style. Although I was figuring that out in my head, I wasn't allowed to wear all black because my parents pretty much dressed me. They told me, like, you get to pick out one outfit for the rest of the year, and that was all you got to wear. Same with shoes. So I kind of just was buying whatever is like versatile for school. Obviously what was cool at the time, because a lot of the times we're all very socially tempered to not only fit in, but to remain away from sticking out because we don't want to get bullied and or ostracized from, you know, the community of the giant mainstream of people. I was going to school, trying to live my life, experience my own self-identity through my mind rather than how I was expressing myself physically, because again, my environment very much dictated that clothing is just utility rather than a form of expression. And it wasn't brought to my mind and or thought until a little bit later when I was near the end of high school, when I was like 18. You know, I started realizing like, wait, I can have my own sense of style, the idea of maturing style, or the sort of you're mature if you have a sense of style or a sense of self with not only your mental attributes or your mentality, but also your physical kind of appearance, right? You know, we have to cut people some breaks and also just, you know, be a little bit more inviting. I know it's strange for me to say that. I know it's very strange, but like, I think being negative in that sense of you got lucky because of your parents rather than you figuring that out at a young age, I think it's very different, right? Again, environment dictates your lifestyle. Same thing goes with your friends, like the people you surround yourself with very much dictates how you will live and how you will think. And with your environment dictating your lifestyle, poverty creates innovation. There's so many people that are very talented, but unfortunately are stuck by poverty and are stuck in that cycle of needing to work, needing to live, needing to eat. They can't pretty much put time into their arts. But I want to give some examples of how poverty very much is innovative. The main example is mending, or boro, which are now a very popular way to showcase decay and wear in fashion. It's now manufactured as an aesthetic rather than clothing being actually lived in and repaired. Regardless of my opinions on the concept of manufactured wear, the origins of boro, a Japanese textile practice, can be traced back to medieval Japan, and when it was in need for peasants to repair their clothing or bedding. Now, the technique involves patching and stitching worn areas of cloth or cutting up older garments and joining them together. The stitching technique is called shishiko, which is a simple running stitch that can be sewn through layers of fabric. As for materials used, it tends to be indigo-dyed hemp or cotton scrap fabrics. The word boro comes from the Japanese word boroboro, which means tattered or repaired. Just a little history lesson about boro and mending, a DIY situation. I'm sure people can give more information on the historics behind all that. Feel free to comment them down below. Maybe correct me if I was completely off. But anywho, other than that, a lot of people do DIY stuff to help extend their life in their own clothing, rather than throwing their items away like most Americans do. It really is all about perspective and creativity. People lack a lot of creativity and curiosity. They would rather buy into something than fix and or make something with things that they already own. I'm sure we have a bunch of random clothes just lying around that you can kind of utilize in your day-to-day in terms of cropping, tailoring, and or making something new. But this leads me to the statement I see a lot being thrown around is money buys style. Yes and no. Money can't buy taste. Taste trumps money. The thing is, and we can see this with reps too as well. Not only do people buy into like fast fashion clothing items, but people also buy reps because it's cheaper and it's like an alternative to buying high-priced items at a fraction of the cost. But the thing is, a lot of the people that buy into reps and or buy into like fast fashion a lot of times is there is no intention with what they're buying. A lot of the times it's just, whoa, this is a really expensive item. This is something I yearn for. I really need to buy it, and they buy it. There's not really any opinion being made and or there's no taste also being like instituted with how they purchase product. It's more with the intentionality of just needing to buy a bunch of things that maybe they saw through TikTok or what someone told them to go purchase or what's currently popular and hot. There's like a meme floating around that like a lot of people that buy into reps usually dress all the same. And it's because like a lot of the items that they're purchasing tend to be very mainstream, very popular, very hot off the presses, so to speak. There isn't really any variety. I would just say like imagine a 16-year-old being told like you could never buy these products, like these really expensive pieces, and then you bring them to a shop where you can buy everything you ever wanted, every box logo, every archive fashion piece that the kids can't even purchase like on Grailed for, and you're like, oh yeah, this costs around like 50 to $100, like it's really cheap. Just go ask your parents for money. Like it still costs money, even if it's like $25 to $50. Or prices range depending on what rep manufacturer you buy from, and also shipping kind of kills you too as well. Imagine it getting seized too as well. There's a whole lot of things with reps, but it's just the illusion of choice is very much there in terms of you have so much to purchase from, but it tends to always be the same popularized item that is super mainstream, and you don't get variety that you would when it comes to trying to like wait and find things. You know, the patience is needed, and it's very much involved with how you should buy product to begin with in terms of fashion. People in poverty aren't going to be buying fast fashion or reps. I mean fast fashion in the sense of buying hauls of clothing. They're most likely only going to be buying what they need for the entirety of the year and or just maybe to replace things that they can't reuse or fix. Now the question you might be asking yourself is, JQ, how do I have taste? How do you gain taste? Where do you learn taste? And taste comes from having your own opinion, your own ideas, and through time. Now I know that sucks to hear because a lot of the times people want to just have everything instant, and it's not how that's developed. It's like people as young as like 17, 18, I hear say like, I found my personal style, I found my personal style. You haven't found your personal style, you found a style that you kind of like, but it's not like personal to you. The thing about personal style is it's an accumulation of a lot of different types of identities that are formed through clothing. There's a belief system, there's symbolic power through what you dress and how you wear it, and you can't find your personal style through the costumes that these giant conglomerates sell to you. These hollowed out versions of subcultures and genres that they sell to people. It's like a party city. I've talked about this in my cores video, and I don't want to rant more about it, but you haven't found your personal style because you haven't even found yourself yet. It's almost ridiculous, and I think a lot of the times people use fashion as a crutch to not only make their personality more interesting, but also to try and help find themselves through clothing, through purchasing things. And that's where capitalism's got you messed up. You don't need to purchase things to figure out yourself. You need to take time for yourself. Sitting alone at home, off your phone. I know it's quite compulsive. We have compulsive natures to grab our phone and look at the phone to be stimulated, but you really need to take some time. Go on a walk. Ask yourself some questions about how you view life and what you think about life and what you think about yourself. And a lot of these things, specifically with fashion, it's all about a reflection of yourself. And you can definitely see a reflection of self through the way people wear items and the way people get so influenced by things. Taste takes time, takes curation, and it takes an accumulation of thought and patience. Fashion is a patience game. It's not a purchase power thing. I think a lot of the times people think that you can buy style or whatever that is. You can buy a format of style, but you can't make it your own. That's a difference. It's like living in clothing that becomes tattered and worn. It's not manufactured. A lot of the styles that rich people own or like buy into, it seems so manufactured. It doesn't seem really like them, right? It's creating an image that, although can look very tasteful when they wear it, it doesn't feel like it belongs to them. And there's a huge difference between people that buy into a style to people who build up a style. And I think that's something to really take some time and think about. Your personality, the way you think, your thoughts, your beliefs, your ideas are all formed into not only yourself as a person, but also with the things you wear. The way you wear it and the way you walk through the world when you wear those items. I'm pretentious, I'm sad, I'm depressed, I'm mysterious and cool, and that's why I wear black, I guess, in a sense. I'm also very conservative with the way I dress. I like to hide my body, I don't like to show it off, so I wear a lot of drapey, oversized clothing. I feel like the clothing for myself is like armor, and I like to hide my body. I like to hide my shape, my form. That's not something you would get out of me if you saw me walking down the street, of course, but as soon as you talk to me, I think you would get some more knowledge of who I am as a person, and then the clothing starts to make more sense. If you talk to a lot of these like new gen kids, these like kids that are getting into like fashion and style, it comes from a place of wanting to feel like you belong into a community as well as feeling accepted. It's an acceptance thing, and I totally understand where it comes from, but I think the thing is we need to not only realize where a lot of these feelings are coming from, but also kind of internalize in ourselves why we feel the need to purchase a lot of the products that are being shoved to our faces. I say this a lot of the times is that people would rather be told what to buy than go out and buy it themselves. And that's not having taste. That is not like having any sense of taste. That's just, you're literally just like watching an ad and like being told what to buy. But I'll give you some tips on how to maybe help you not suffer so much into fashion. Tip number 1, always buy secondhand. We got eBay, we got OfferUp, we got Craigslist, we got Facebook Marketplace, we have Yahoo Auctions or Yahoo just in general. We have sometimes Instagram pages. Grailed can be a hit or miss. Sometimes they have good pricing, sometimes they don't. It just depends on the designer. If the designer is really just kind of niche and not really wanted, you could probably find good prices for that. It's all a variable of person to person and designer to designer. Obviously there's tips and tricks to try and haggle with the person selling you the pieces, and of course you can get better deals, but lowballing will probably get you blocked, and usually flirting with the seller doesn't necessarily work all the times. It just really depends. Depop can be kind of good, kind of bad. Watch out for fakes. Watch out for fakes in most things. You just gotta be very careful. Usually the only fakes tend to be very, very hype pieces, very mainstream pieces. So if you're not looking for mainstream pieces, which I highly recommend not doing, you'll be probably fine. The Real, that's a great place to buy stuff. You can find great pieces there. You most likely will find a lot of cool things. I know a lot of people go and buy stuff from there. I don't know if these stores are not only in the US, or if they're out of the US, I don't know, but Buffalo Exchange, 2nd Street, those two things hit crazy. Sometimes they have really good pieces in there for good prices because a lot of the times the workers, don't really know what they have and they price things really low, and you can find things for good deals. That's a great place. If you live in LA, there's a place called Wasteland. A lot of people go there quite often, so I recommend going there. I don't know if they have any Wastelands elsewhere, but obviously, lo and behold, vintage shopping, or let's just say thrift shopping, let's not use vintage, but thrift shopping's really great. It's really bad in big cities because it's really popularized, but if you travel out into the middle of nowhere, you probably will find things for really good prices. If TikTok hasn't already TikTokified the thrift shops there, the actual thrift shops. Discord is also a great place to buy and sell things. In my own Discord, we do have a buy and sell channel. I don't know if, I'm pretty sure there has been a lot of sales that have gone there from what I'm aware of. Discords are great. Try and join a Discord. They can be really fun / very strange. Get a job! Get a job and save money and budget if you can do that. If you have the ability to get a job and save from it and then put it into a hobby that you enjoy, do it. Don't wait around and complain on TikTok comment section saying you're poor when you live in a middle-class home in the suburbs. Go and do something about it. Try and find a side hustle. You know, when I was young, I was always selling something. I was selling either candy in middle school or selling Yu-Gi-Oh cards in middle school as well. And I think I stopped during high school. That's when I got into like more bigger business with selling clothes just in general. And I continue to do that even now for like the sake of it. I find it fun. I find it really interesting to see what I can get my hands on in terms of cool pieces nowadays rather than Supreme and the sneaker thing, you know, in the past. Fashion tends to hold its value and or sometimes can yield even more profit. A lot of the clothes that I purchased for really cheap, like I got them for like $60, $80. They sometimes, you know, they cash me out for double the price that I bought it for, or even triple sometimes, or even quadruple if I'm really, really lucky. It just really depends. And, you know, the longer you're in the scene of fashion, just to begin with, the more time passes, the more items can be worth more later down the line as more people join the ever so growing community of fashion dudes, people. I hate you all. As for a conclusion, I'm here to conclude the video somewhat as we ramp into the vlog. All I really have to say is you shouldn't confuse fashion as some pay to win, because that would mean that there's a form of competition and your value shouldn't be wrapped up with the idea of being better than another. Your own value can only be dictated by how aware you are about yourself, not with what you wear. Clothing is an extension of self, and it can never be all of you, and it really shouldn't be. So, alas, I leave you with that thought. Conclude any comments you may have in the comment section, and enjoy this mystical ride of a boring vlog. Very big day today. Today is the day that we go and shoot the Patient Zero stuff. So, now I'm pretty much ready to go, and gonna go meet up with everybody. We're gonna go meet up with Kay really quick, take an Uber to the place where I'm getting the rental, CC Rentals, if anyone's questioning where I get my rentals at. Then we're gonna pick up the van, and then we can start our day. We got kicked out of the other place that we were at. It was really cool. It was this like crazy abandoned place. We were doing a quick check around to see like what was there, if the entirety of if the property wasn't fully damaged, or if there was anything weird or sketchy, like maybe homeless people or just people in the area in general. But we ended up getting kicked out. We did get a lot of cool shots. I did get to see the surrounding with all the crops and stuff, which was like actually really cool to see. But yeah, we did get kicked out. I guess someone saw us, one of the property guys saw us, and he was like, you guys need to get out. And we did push it. We got some other cool shots, but we ended up having to leave. Now we're at this other location, which might get us kicked out again, but here, check it out. It's this like abandoned house over there. I left everyone there because if a van was physically seen like near the property and stuff, it'd be kind of strange.
Obviously no one's with me, but everyone's over there. I'm hoping they get good shots. I'm waiting for a call if something occurs, but we'll see what happens.
With that, I hate all you fashion MFs. I hate people that call themselves fashion MFs. Like, those people piss me off. I actually don't like those people. If you call yourself a fashion MF, I don't like you. Catch you guys in the next one.